Next up in the agenda is 8.02, a discussion of our 2020-21 school calendar options. And I would note again that this is just an informational presentation. This is not a decision-making point for us. I will turn it over to Dr. Noonan and Mr. Bates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Gill. This evening, Mr. Bates and Ms. Michael are going to talk a little bit about the calendar and sort of how they got where they got. And they're going to speak a little bit about their journey with the ad hoc committee. And there are two people, or a couple people maybe, one person, Amy Hall, who's here from the ad hoc committee. We had invited the ad hoc committee to come tonight, but because of the late hour, after we had told them that when we were going to do it, I don't think people came. But anyway, want to thank, and Mr. Bates is going to name them, but I do want to thank publicly the ad hoc committee for their incredible work pulling together 4 very viable and workable calendars, school calendars for us. And when you hear who was on the committee, again, as the community is listening in on this as well, you'll see that it was a broad representation of people that both live in the community, have kids, also work in the system, and the like. But tonight, but as I set this up, I want to talk more about process than I do about the calendars, because this has been has meant to be a very transparent, very honest approach to working through the school calendar. And so I want to just kind of back up to say that we started this conversation on October 8th at a regular school board meeting. That evening, there was an opportunity for public comment. We heard from a couple of people during the public comment section on the October 8th date, which was great. The first ad hoc committee meeting was held on October 16th. At that October 16th meeting, the drivers, sort of the presentation that I had done for the school board at the meeting on October 8th was presented again, where we talked about the different drivers that are associated with what goes into a calendar. Then there was and then they had their first conversation. Then there was a community meeting on October 17th where we hosted about 50 people at the Mustang Cafe, where we talked about those drivers again, and we talked about additional considerations. People had an opportunity to share what their questions were, what their concerns were. There was a second ad hoc committee meeting on October 23rd, and then on November 6th with a third ad hoc committee meeting where the final touches were put on the 4 calendars. We also offered public comment tonight, again, at our regular meeting. There'll be another community outreach meeting on Thursday, November 14th, from 6:30 to 8 o'clock at Mustang Cafe, and it will mirror very closely the presentation you're going to hear tonight. And it really, again, is going to be more about process than anything else. On November 15th, the day following that community outreach meeting, there will be a survey that will go out, and you'll get a chance to see what the survey is going to look like this evening. We'll have the results for you posted in board docs on December 5th. There will be public comment again at a regular meeting on December 10th at Chambers, and at that point we'll do the presentation of the survey results. And then there'll be another public comment, an opportunity to speak on December 17th, and that's the evening that you all will vote. So I would urge the community members that have concerns to voice your concerns publicly, or to email us at calendar@fccps.org, which is the email account that we've set up, that we've put out there for everybody to see. We've also recorded all of our sessions. We've put them on the website. Bless you. But my hope is that as people have questions, as people have concerns, that they can continue to share those concerns with us, because we've tried very hard to be very open and transparent and honest through this process. So I want to turn it over in just a second to William and Kristen, Mr. Bates and Ms. Michael. But before I do, I just want to say thank you to both of them for leading, I think, a really great process that got us to a great place. It is a jigsaw puzzle or a Rubik's Cube, trying to get 180 days into the school year. And what you'll see tonight is the outcome of the work. You didn't see the process that happened, that went on with this room was filled with people. And not knowing all of the pieces that go into it, it's hard to make judgments. So that's why we've really tried to be really clear with the board and with the community about all of the drivers that go into the calendar, so that people will understand that this is not as easy as we're going to start on this day and we're going to end on this day, that there are a lot of moving parts that go with it. So, so thank you all for your hard work. And again, to sort of reiterate what Chair Gill said, this is not an evening where you make decisions. This is an opportunity to hear sort of how the process went, what went into it, and what the outcome of the process was. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bates and Ms. Michael.
Thank you, Dr. Noonan. And Dr. Noonan was very thorough in his lead-in, and so for that we are appreciative. That's going to, I think, allow us to spend a little less time on the lead-in and more time. No, that's great. That's great. But more time on looking at some of the outcomes and the products and doing some cross comparisons with the various calendar options. But as Dr. Noonan did mention, we did have a wide variety of folks who were serving as members of the ad hoc committee, and we're not going to go through all of the names, but we did want to share those names with you and let you know which organizations or which factors of the or factions of the division and community they were representing. So with our peak representatives, our PTSA and PTA representatives, the pre-K-12 representatives, athletics, they're all on there and they all had a voice. I also want to thank Marty Goodell and Perla and O'Donnell, who's not here, for their work behind the scenes. Also Mr. Brett and Naharika for her work on this project as well. She came to one of the meetings and served as a student voice, and so we want to acknowledge all of them for their work. So Dr. Noonan did go over a glimpse into the work, which included our ad hoc meetings, and he also mentioned the presentation this evening versus, as well as our calendar survey that will go live on Friday. So this is a snapshot of the team in action. And what we did is we brought everyone in and we went over the drivers. We talked about the values of the community. We talked about what needs to go into the calendar. And so we'll review that in just a moment. But this is what the work actually looked like. And as Dr. Noonan had mentioned, we had a room full of members digging into what goes into the calendar and actually back mapping from the very last day that teachers would report and that were on, and the last day that they were on contract to the very first day that our new teachers returned. And this project here involved having each member go into one of 4 groups and work specifically on a calendar option. So we had 4 groups. We had 2 pre-Labor Day options and 2 post-Labor Day options. And so that's where each of these members is working in a collective group of about 6 or 7 on each one of the options. The next slide shows the presentations, because what we asked our members to do is go through each of the calendars from the first day to the last day and then present out to the entire ad hoc committee group. Once they presented, the ad hoc committee group gave feedback based upon a lot of the things that we had already talked about that need to go into the calendar. And so this was actually done here. If you look at the picture on the right, as we're going through, we're making sure that each calendar has the teacher work days, the professional development days. We're also looking at the holidays and making sure that all of our contract days for teachers and our 180 student days are included. And then some of the questions that were bubbling up based upon feedback, we were able to share that. This actually happened prior to leaving leaving the meeting and going back to the constituents and getting feedback. So this picture here is actually the second meeting. So after they received feedback from their committee members, the ad hoc committee members, they then went to their peak representatives or their peak members or their SEEK members, their PTA, received feedback on that calendar option and then brought it back again.
I'm going to just interject. I think that's a really important point to hit on for a second. This was a representative committee, but they represented a lot of people, and a lot of people got a chance to see these options before they're being presented to you tonight to give feedback. So while there's few people on the screen, there are hundreds of people behind them that represent this work.
So as we shared before, the ad hoc committee members were informed. We wanted them to be informed at the very highest level before they dove into the work of actually putting the calendar together. And so some of the basics that we talked about were already shared here, but we wanted to reinforce. One, what goes into the calendar? What values does it reflect or does it need to reflect? What's the contract length for teachers? So we made sure that all of those things that were required were included in the calendar as well as those desirables as well. The explanation from the Virginia legislation and the 2 pre and post Labor Day. And current state of the Commonwealth and Region 4, we've had conversations around that. What are other school divisions doing locally with their calendars within Region 4 as well as the Commonwealth? And then we talked about our engagement plan. So what goes into the calendar? Again, we ensured that every calendar included the 180 instructional days, the 200 contract days, balanced quarters. As best as we could, we wanted to make sure those quarters were balanced out. We also considered our testing windows, knowing when our IB versus AP versus SOL testing windows, and really looking at closely how many days of instruction we had leading into those calendar testing windows. We also wanted to look at the athletic calendar and, as best we could, ensuring that the calendars, the start of school lined up, and the start of school and or the end of school lined up with the athletic calendars, because we know that there's not just local events that need to be considered, but also state events as well. State requirements and the board's will, which is ending by June 15th or as close to June 15th. And then, as we mentioned before, the professional days, including teacher work days and division-wide professional development days.
And then I do too.
Okay, so although, I just want to point out, but although these are in descending order, this isn't a ranked list. So when we talk about our feedbacks and considerations, these are the things that bubbled up, not just with the ad hoc calendar committee, but feedback that came from our school communities and our greater Falls Church City communities. And so, again, we're the 3-day Thanksgiving, the two-week winter break, ending school by June 15th, having time off each month. And that was something that came up from both parents and staff in looking at some calendars after that first iteration where we may have had 6 or 7 weeks without a break, and the importance of making sure that there's some time off for teachers, whether it's toward the end of the quarter and we need a teacher work day for grading, or we go that extended period without students having a break. We looked at our flex days and making sure that they were adjustable throughout the year. We also looked at the start of school alignment with the VASL in District 10, which is our athletics, and that was mentioned before. Staff was vocal about planning days after each quarter, and the importance of having opportunities, again, not just for professional development, but for teachers to have time to do some grading or to do planning at the end of each quarter before the students return. and keeping our teacher workdays separate from the PD days, and then alignment with surrounding division calendars. That was something that came out both with staff as well as with parents and community members.